were red flags right away. Where's all the money coming from? You add new things to the farm, but not to scale. Because if he's not doing it to scale, if he's not making enough money, but he bought a really super expensive tractor brand new with all the fixings. I've never known a farmer to do that, by the way. When I see your fences, honey, you got money.
So the other day, this lady on the internet asked me how much money I made on our farm. And not just like how much money we make from our farm and our farming operations, which is a number that I usually report once a year. So when it comes down to how much money did we make farming in 2022, it ended up being $18,560.86. But specifically, she wanted to know how much money I made from making videos and podcasts and writing books and doing all the social media content that I do. And for a number of reasons, that's not a number that I usually give out. But there was something in the way that this woman asked her questions and the way she talked about me and my farm and how she'd been following my farm for a very long time that actually made me want to reach out to her and have a conversation. And specifically, she seemed really frustrated with me, and I wanted to understand why. And so I sent her a message on Instagram and said, hey, would you like to chat? And this woman, whose name is Carina, and she lives out in Michigan with her husband, she was actually kind enough to say, yeah, I'll hop on a video call with you and we can have a conversation and you can record it. And then you can broadcast that conversation to all the people who listen to your podcast, and I would be totally cool with that. And so earlier today, we hopped on a video call and had a very interesting conversation about our farm, how much money my farm actually makes, the moral and ethical dilemma that my farm presents, and she gave me some very good feedback on what I should do about it all.
We started watching early on when you had the ducks, because it is really hard to find good videos on how to care for ducks properly. Like, really hard. Chickens, no problem. There are 50 million videos. But ducks, especially when we started in 2019, not so much. And so we really appreciated having somebody showing, this is what I do, this is what I found. We also have very cold winters. How do you deal with water? How do you deal with, heat? How do you deal with all these things? There was some really good stuff there, so we kept watching. But I think where we started having concerns was, it's like you add new things to the farm, but not to scale. Now, I grew up on the edge of a farming family. And, I grew up when my dad and my stepmom got married. My stepmom's family farm was one of the biggest in the county. It was a big grain farm, so I've rocked fields. We raised our own beef cattle. We raised our own hogs. My first pet was a goat, that back to the land thing in the 70s and 80s that a lot of people did. My brothers and I, we were right there. And when you have grown up with it, you know that there's a big difference between doing it for your family and doing it for money. It's a business. When you are a farm, it's a business. And in order to do any business, you have to do it to scale, right? I mean, just look at it from social media. I do a few videos a year just because my friends ask for duck videos. That's not to scale, right? I would have to do a video a day. And I would have to have more followers, and it's all about scale. Because if I wanted to make money off of it, it'd have to be a business. So we would watch your videos, and you would say, this is a farm, and I'm doing the business, and I want to make money. And then I'm looking at it, and I'm like, none of this is to scale. Like, this is not, like, okay, the trees maybe. Okay, the trees. But the ducks, you'd have to do more. The geese, you'd have to do more. And then when you started, where I started really getting frustrated was when you added in the cattle. And so I started looking at, because just having raised cattle, there were red flags right away. The fencing was not going to be adequate. The space had not been checked for problems for their hooves, just things like that. So I started going down into the comments on your YouTube videos, and people were giving you really good feedback, but you were not engaging with it at all. And then my husband was actually the one to start asking, where's all the money coming from? Because if he's not doing it to scale, if he's not making enough money, if he's got like $5,000 in profit, but he bought a really super expensive tractor brand new with all the fixings. I've never known a farmer to do that, by the way, like ever. So that was an automatic like red flag to the to me. It was like,
right.
whoa, where'd the money go? That is money.
And that makes perfect sense. And this is the dilemma I have. And this is, I've tried my best. And this is why I actually asked, and I'm like, oh, I want to talk to this lady and like get her perspective. So there's two parts to what I do for a living. There is the farm,
right,
and there's the content and like making videos. And those two parts are what I do. I could not do either without the other, like full stop. And I feel like I'm pretty transparent about that. I could not, basically run the farm without the social media money actually propping some of those pieces up, for sure. And I actually don't think I'd be successful in making social media content if I wasn't talking about my farm, because that's what I'm passionate about and that's what's interesting. And so those two things are like essentially make for the single entity. And so you can argue, oh, that's not a traditional farm, and I'd be the first to say that. But the dilemma I have is you can't do one without the other. I would argue that to the...
Well, I think you've set up your business that way. I think you've set up your business that they're intertwined.
Right. But each business, right, has its own strategic choices you make. So when I started in 2018, my plan was I wanted to be the biggest duck egg seller in northern New England. Like that was like my goal, and I would ultimately find a way to do distribution into Boston, and like that was like the vision I had in the back of my mind. But as I started to do it and started to see kind of what worked and what didn't, what I was finding was the duck egg operation itself wasn't going to scale. And duck eggs are such a really bad business to be in and to begin with, as you probably have from.
I mean, you have to have, like we have found to sell duck eggs, you have to have a very set clientele. You have got to find them and you've got to keep them happy.
And you got to have a different geography than at least I have. I don't know quite your situation, but if I'm looking at my nearest metro situations, like, say Montreal, I've got border crossings. That's complicated. Boston is 3.5 hours away. And so I guess I could start producing and selling at farmers markets once a week there, but that doesn't make sense. And so like that was where I was come, say, the fall of 2018 and into early 2019. But I was seeing at the same time, like, wow, well, the videos seem to be getting traction. And so let me just keep making that and doing this and see kind of where it goes. And so like, that is essentially the story of how my farm grew and like started to go. And so that's where I started to kind of say, well, let me see where this goes and let me keep riding this out. I still had a day job. When I started up here in 2018, I had taken a new job here in Vermont. 2019, 2020, 21, I was working full time, not just like, like a part-time job. It was like a 50 to 60 hour a week job that I was doing on top of everything else.
Like most farmers.
Like that. Yeah, right. I mean, and that's the truth. And even if you look at what I'm doing right now, if I'm going to be honest in accounting for how much time I'm spending working on the farm each week, in the summer months, it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of like 35 to 45-ish hours a week. In the winter months, it's probably about 15 to 20 hours a week in terms of like actual farm work that I'm doing on the farm each week.
Right.
And
things slow down.
Yeah, things slow down a lot, especially up here. And so then where am I working all my other time? I'm writing a book right now. I'm, editing more videos. I'm doing podcasts. And so like, it's much like a farmer who's working an off-farm job, except they are intertwined. And then the other thing that I see in a difference is if I'm thinking about my distribution model, right? Like if I'm thinking about like, I spend every Saturday at the farmer's market, for example. That's something I could do, but that's say 8 or 9 hours out of my day versus if I took that time and made some videos and then sold, essentially product through that, which is how I do my goose operation. That actually, it just makes more sense for me and it's more efficient. I think, one thing you said about my operations not being to scale, I'd actually challenge that a little bit, right? Because the ducks, 100% not to scale. Chickens, 100% not to scale, doesn't even remotely make sense. But I like to have ducks and chickens and eggs, and that's why I do it. The geese actually are. I think, so this year I harvested 55 geese. I also sold, I don't have my number right in front of me, but it was more than 25 packs of goose eggs in the spring. And, if I'm selling a pack of 4 at $70 a piece, that's a decent business to be in. And if I'm also then thinking about, I probably sold about 20-ish or so goslings over the course of the spring too. And so if I look at each of those pieces and add them all up together, and then I'm selling 55 geese, say an average weight of about 10 pounds per goose at $15 per pound, yeah, that's not enough money to, put me in like, riches. But at the same time, I feel like that's an operation that's moving towards essentially scale and is profitable. So if I'm lessening my expenses, lessening my infrastructure related to running that specific piece, that's a distinction.
I can understand where you're coming from on that. But I guess my question then is, what is the true farm product? If the true farm product is the social media, then the rest is almost like window dressing for the social media. It's what you've created in order to continue. And to me, that's marketing. A lot of what you do on the social media just says marketing to me. You're marketing this, you're marketing that. But if that ultimately is your true farm product, then here's where I get a little grumpy. And I'm just speaking as a homesteader.
This is why I wanted to have this guy. I really appreciate you engaging.
This is where I get grumpy. I'm going to get on my soapbox. Here's my little soapbox. There are so many in the homesteading world who their real true product is the marketing. They're writing the books, they're doing the videos, they're doing all, and they have convinced all these people that you can do this, everybody can homestead, and you can do this, and blah, blah, blah. And they don't talk about, and they don't admit how very, much they have to subsidize their homestead, how much money you need to start up with in order to homestead, the knowledge base that you need ahead of time. Or they talk about the beginner level homestead, but they never really talk about much more than that. And that makes me wonder, do you do more than the beginning level? Or is it just that that's where the money is? And when we started getting serious about homesteading, we grew up this way. So it's not like I magically started. But when we got more serious in 2019, because I had 2 teenage boys to feed at home, I'm just saying. My son, when he was on the swim team, this is why we got serious. When my son was on the high school swim team, he started averaging 6,000 calories a day. And then...
Oh, that's a lot to feed.
Yeah. And then my husband turned to me at a swim meet and said, my son should be on the swim team next year too. And all I could think of was 2 boys at a high school swim. How are we feeding them? How are we, what did my stepmom do when she married my dad and we had all 4 of us? What'd she do? She put in an acre garden. We got cattle. We got hogs. Well, it worked for her. But I had a lot of knowledge base. And when I see a lot of the stuff from these, homesteading influencers, it has really stopped being about this is the basic knowledge that you need. It turns into marketing. You need to buy this. This is the best tool ever. Everybody needs to get into this. If you really are a serious one, you've got to do this and you need this stuff. And here I'm sponsored by, and I'm watching that as somebody who grew up with it thinking, what is your product? If your product is the marketing, you're just selling me a story. If I'm watching the videos, I'm looking for information. I'm looking for skills that I need to learn. I'm looking for a knowledge base that I need and, or answers to questions that I have. And it gets really, I understand the vast majority of people watching your videos probably aren't coming from that perspective. But then it makes me a little grumpy when I'm I'm seeing, just speaking as somebody who grew up in rural Michigan, when I see your fences, honey, you got money. Those are money fences. The first video I saw when you put
the fence that I built this year. I probably outlaid about, $3,000 in materials to build my, the perimeter fence for my cattle. Or, I probably got $1,000 in fencing reels and polywire for moving the cattle on a daily basis.
Yeah, I looked at the fencing. When you put that new fencing up, I'm like, oh, Morgan's got money.
Right, but I guess here's where I want to push on a little and agree with you on some of that. So I think one component of it is this. I feel like I have tried as much as I can, and this is part of why I wanted to have this conversation and record it and put it out there, right? Of saying, hey, look, I'm not paying all my bills by just doing this. Look, we are 2 people who have good off-farm incomes, and that's what we do, and that's how we're paying our core bills, and we're able to do it. We're not stretched, say, as thin as you and your husband, and I don't ever try to position it as such. I think, though, the thing I push back on is when you say that the product is purely marketing, that's all we do. And like the farm stuff is just window dressing. I actually don't feel that way. And I really do try to run each part of the farm as a P&L and have a payback and have essentially a business plan associated with each of those. And if you look at like my annual videos of like how the farm makes money, right? Like when I do those, as I'm breaking down the farming operations, I'm trying to allocate as much of that cost as possible to each of those things. So when I'm allocating to the geese, all the goose-related costs I'm trying to keep as true as possible. Yeah, there's certain things like I'm defraying property taxes that, you know, some people might not have that advantage of. But then again, we don't, this is our home. So like, you know, like how much of that am I like allocating? So it's really messy.
There's always money missing out of it. And so you're saying in the video, you know, this is about transparency and I'm telling you everything, but the cattle don't go on this year's. You bought them this year?
Right. Because,
you know,
well, no, but that's not how you do it. But I challenge you really there. That's not how you do accounting. So if you're thinking about a business and you're thinking about accounting for a business, when you make large infrastructure purchases like fencing or a tractor or even like building a new barn, right? You actually have, you know, a depreciation schedule that you attach to it. Any like full-on farmer is going to talk about that piece, right? To say that I'm not talking about, you know, counting the cattle that like the cost of like I paid $5,000 for my initial herd of cattle, right? As like that's the number that went there. And so
but that's not said in the video.
When you go into like, you know, GAAP accounting practices, people get bored. Like that's part of the balance that I have to strike, right? And yes, you guys are further down, but am I going to spend, you know, in a 20-minute video, 10 minutes explaining GAAP accounting practices to people who have no idea what I'm talking about and how to think about, you know, either cost allocation within a different P&L or thinking about like depreciation schedules and, you know, standard and non-standard depreciation schedules.
What if you did this?
Who cares? I mean, most people don't care.
What if you did this? This was just throwing an idea out there. You have made a big thing about transparency and wanting to make sure that people know. But when you say that and then you hide information, those are oil and water. They don't mix. What if you did do the monthly blog or something where you did explain all of that stuff and said, this is the stuff. If you really want to know, this is the stuff. You know, I've got this, you know, I'm dealing with this much money to play with. This is why I'm allocating it this way.
Idea. I like what you're saying. So actually, you know what I think I'm going to do? And this is part of like how my content's shifting a little bit. So in the main video, I will probably not go into depreciation schedules, at least in that video, just for the same reason I just said. But, you know, since I've been doing these longer podcasts where they can be like an hour or even 2 hours, I'm going to probably make a podcast follow-up, and I might even use a clip of us talking here for it.
I like that idea.
Here's a podcast follow-up where I actually dive in. And so that's a video that I'm planning for December because I just don't have all my numbers ticked and tied yet.
Right.
But like, yeah, when I do that, probably, you know, Thursday the short video goes out, and then Friday, yeah, maybe I'll sit down in my office and just like bang through something like that. I actually really like that idea. To try to
then you're following through on what you're really saying. But if somebody isn't interested, they don't have to. But you can always point back to that then. If somebody calls you out and says, hey, you said transparency, check that podcast from the week later. And I think that would help. I will say the other thing that I would challenge you on is, and this is just something I've seen in the comments and dealing with, you know, you have a lot of really strong fans who know absolutely nothing about farming or homesteading. You have cute animals and they like cute animal videos. Nothing wrong with that. You grab the audience that you can. But you have people who do know putting comments in there saying things like, I remember when you moved the cattle to the barn and you moved the fencing, you had cattle people in the comments saying that fence is wrong. That is not the right fence for that. You need to check the soil there. Have you run, you know, metal detectors? You're going to get you know, that's a barn midden. That's what they did back in the day. They would throw metal and glass and whatever, and you better take care of that, or your cattle are going to get stuff in their hooves and they can get sick and die. And oh my gosh, first of all, I never saw through any of that you interact with any of them. You often would talk about your haters, and then these people would come out of the woodwork. You don't know farming. He knows more about farming than you do. You can't attack him. He's this amazing farmer, and you don't. And it's like, girl, I've done cattle longer than you've probably been alive. So I'm just saying, like, I shouldn't have to talk about my bona fides. He's the one and it was multiple people trying to give you good advice. If you don't interact with them in the comments, and and they are seen as negative or attacking when they're just trying to give some constructive criticism that I would hope any farmer would want, that I think it would be important on your end as the content creator to say, hey, when I say haters, I'm not talking about the people giving me good advice. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about...
Yeah, let me talk about that very specifically, because I think you raise a good point here. And again, it's me trying to do my best and probably not being great about it. So number one, yeah, I actually always appreciate when somebody who knows what they're talking about, and I usually am pretty good at sussing out the difference, even though I might not know the thing, or at least it makes me stop and then do some additional research and then say, oh yeah, that person knows what they're talking about. So I try to do my best to do that. At the same time, like I'm putting out 4 long videos a week. I'm putting out, half a dozen short videos a week. I'm putting out videos on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. I typically will go in the first 24 hours and look at a video's comments, respond, react, do some stuff. There's a lot of times where I'm not going to go back. It's just because I just don't have the sheer time, because each video you're putting out creates another train of content. And so I can't, I physically can't. I would spend my entire day simply managing comments and still be behind if I tried to respond and react to each one. And so I can't quite referee that. I think your point, though, and I'm saying it right here, and I'll put this out as part of this conversation, right? Like, yeah, I think sometimes folks can, number one, just because they see somebody on the internet, think that person knows everything. When I feel like part of my content and part of what I've been trying to do since day one is say, hey, I'm a guy who knows nothing about farming. Watch me start to learn and try to figure things out, and I will show you what that's like. That's what I feel like all my videos have always been.
Right.
Regardless of when I was starting with the ducks to adding the cattle to where I am today, like each of those things is me doing my best to share, here's what I'm doing, here's what I've learned. Never ever do I want anyone to think that I'm an expert, because I don't feel that's the case. And in fact, I've definitely learned more from commenters than I feel like I've probably taught people over the years, if I had to guess what the ledger ultimately looks like.
That's fair. I think maybe just the occasional comment of, when I'm saying haters, I'm not talking about these people, and because
I think that's a really good point. Yeah, I think that is exceptionally fair, and I don't say that enough. I think you're right about that. I actually feel like I made a video. It was last summer where I was actually talking about haters, and I actually went to a guy's farm who's a goat farmer down in southern Vermont, just to like talk about him and learn from him, because yeah, there are some haters or some people who are negative, but they actually know what they're talking about. He would be an example of somebody who I was like, yeah, he knows what he's talking about. He's a goat farmer. He's got some of these experiences with ruminants, and some of the things he's calling out are legit. And that's why when I was looking for people to talk to, he was like one of the first people on my list. So I think you're right, but I don't say it enough. And part of what I struggle with is this, right? I put out a video and I say something, and I'm very, very intentional in what I say, but then everybody's going to see every single video. So for example, when you brought up the tractor earlier, right? Like in the video where I show, hey, look, I just got a new tractor. I literally say in the video, this is not something I would buy right now. This is something that's almost entirely paid for by YouTube ad revenue.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and so I say that, right? I don't say that every single time I pull out the tractor. I don't, because I feel like it would be almost exhausting. But to your point, maybe it's like I got to do like every once in a while another reminder. But it's part of my struggle where it's like, I feel like I put these things out there. But yeah, I mean, if I put so much content out there, not everybody's going to see every single thing. And the impression and the assumptions that can get created, I think that's very fair in terms of like, how do I try to strike a balance? And I don't think I have a great solution, but your point is well taken there.
Well, like my mom grew up with horses. She had horses most of my life. And mom always said, you can tell the difference between rich horse people and regular horse people by the fences. Because Rich horse people have the nice fences. They've got that expensive fencing that when you go and you look at it at the store, you're like, that's how much, that's how much again? And I have how many acres to, wow, okay, what's my next cheaper option? And I've seen that with so many homesteaders, like for our ducks, we obviously have to fence off the garden because they're ducks. And so, when you've watched a duck just go right down your row of lettuce, you're like, that can't happen again. And so you get really serious about your fencing. But, do I have the money for the really fancy movable, solar, battery, electric? No. We don't have that kind of money. So we, find what we can on Facebook Marketplace and we work this out and we move that around and everything. And then when you see somebody with really nice, expensive fencing, my first thought is they've got money, and when I watch your videos at the end of the year and it's very clearly not coming from the farm profit, to me that says it's either from private sources you had before farming or the social media marketing. And,
that's 100% true. I mean, so
yeah.
I guess to like just do a slight nuance there, right? So when I buy, like, I just bought some new perimeter netting for the chickens this year. When I buy that, I'm allocating that cost over a 3-year period because that's my, essentially depreciation schedule I treat for fencing like that. I'm buying that. I'm allocating a third of that cost to my chicken operation. And so that's how I'm handling it. And so I try to make that fall into that infrastructure line item when I'm doing my final P&L for, say, chicken eggs at the end of the year. But that said, when I think, when I was starting, all my startup money just came from myself. I don't have like an inheritance or like a trust fund or anything. My mom growing up was a nurse. My dad was a teacher. So I feel like it's pretty standard middle-class background. But at the same time, like I worked a lot. I had very high paying jobs and, very good savings rate. And even the job that I was working when I was, starting the farm, paid me a good salary. And so, that was where my startup capital came from. That's where I got the money to buy the farm. And then as I've gone and as things have grown with social media, if you look, especially past like 2020 and 2021, all of that stuff, I'm funding it with like YouTube dollars or Facebook dollars. And again, I feel like, I try to talk about that and it is an unfair comparison. And I think the struggle is this, and I have friends who are content creators as well, who actually started in different places than I did, where they were like, getting their stuff repossessed on the regular basis and, dealing with like some real struggle to like just even keep their land. And it wasn't until like follower counts and views start to go up that they start to get the money to deal with that. And in a weird way, and this is why they don't disclose it, much like I'm uncomfortable disclosing it too, a lot of folks will resent you for that when at the same time, it's not like they're, how do I put it? It's not like they're not earning that money, I guess is maybe the way to put it.
It's just that it's not
homestead. Different. It's
not really farm product.
Yeah, completely. But I mean, who's out there actually saying, hey, I don't know. Yeah, I shouldn't say this because I actually think of two people who are doing this. Who's out there right now saying, oh, I pay for everything with the homestead? Like, and I think, I'd be the first person to tell you, homesteading is a very, very difficult way to save money. You probably could talk about that.
Yeah, homesteading, you don't homestead for money. And that's actually one of the problems I have with a lot of influencers. And that is one of the reasons why we stayed watching you as long as we did, was because at least you were honest. The farm did not pay for this, and you do say that, and it's little comments here and there. I would like having the more information added later of, let me explain what I mean by that and where it's coming from. I can understand what you're saying. I can't say how much I'm making on the social media because there are certain things you don't disclose in business in order to stay in business. I mean, that makes sense. Most people, I think, if you just explained it that way, would totally be, oh, well, of course, if you're negotiating with a sponsor, you don't tell us how to get it.
I have said exactly that in at least the last 2, if not 3 videos of like how much money the farm made. I have said
we stopped watching a bit back. So
yeah, okay, I genuinely try to say that point because I mean, look, even in this uncomfortable questions video, like I said, this is going to be a question that comes up, and I'm going to say, no, I don't disclose that, and here's why. It's a couple of reasons.
And that'd be
but
good.
I think here's the thing I will say, and I'll say it even in this video. I make more than $100,000 a year in putting video and content on the internet. So like, if I'm just going to say, how much do I make on that side? It's more than 100,000. I'm not going to say what, but it's just to give you an order of magnitude relative to, I'll probably make somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 from the farming operations this year. Like, it'll be in that range in terms of and so I'm not trying to pretend like that's the majority of my income even remotely. And like I said, I will put those numbers out there, but at the same time, like, how do you try to make that realistic? And, some of the decisions I'm going to make given my situation are different. So if I'm just exclusively trying to run a farm, I would do a lot of things differently. I would probably only grow trees because that's the most profitable thing to do. But honestly, growing trees is actually the worst performing thing for YouTube. And so, like, I'm in this catch-22. Like, okay, I can make
videos.
Lots of tree videos. Right. Look, there are a very small segment of folks who absolutely love them. Most people are like, let me see something else. Let me see the cattle. Let me see this.
Well, then let the cute animals.
Dog. Like, yes. And so that's the dilemma I have. And so because of my situation, I don't feel like I need to do exactly what I would do as a purist farmer, because that would actually be the worst business decision that a true farmer wouldn't actually make for themselves, because I would automatically be making less money by focusing on the most profitable product. And so I get that I'm in this weird world. And honestly, this year, I've been trying to update my 3-year plan for the farm, or 5-year plan for the farm. And I'm still struggling on what to do, because like the situation I'm in is so abnormal relative to what somebody would do to say, well, how do you grow and scale your farm? And so I'm constantly struggling with how to strike the right balance there. And I don't have a good solution for it. And if anybody out there is hearing this, or if you have it, or your husband, I'm totally open to it. I just don't know how to, it's like I have a cheat code in a video game, right? And that's how I'm playing the video game. It's not like I'm lucky that I have this cheat code. I feel completely blessed and recognize it's a privilege that many, many other folks don't have. But I don't know how not to use the cheat code. Like, and I feel like it's dumb not to use the cheat code. And so it's a dilemma that I face, and I don't want that to come off as like whining, because again, I know how lucky I am, but at the same time, I struggle with it. And I talk about this a lot, but like, if I won the lottery tomorrow, my life wouldn't drastically change. I might buy the farm next door. I might buy some more fancy equipment. I might make a few less videos and just, kind of take a week off here and there. But other than that, like, I would still be making videos because I love it. I love the creative expression. I love engaging with people. I love telling stories. Like, I'm super passionate about that. And I would want to be the one who's getting up every single morning and taking care of the animals, because I absolutely love it. It's like my favorite thing to do, being out there and working around the farm and doing the chores daily. Like, and so, if that's what I would really do if I won the lottery, spending my days creating a gigantic tree nursery doesn't seem like a very smart choice either. And so it's very much the struggle I've had, and I don't still have a good answer there.
Well, I think then that's when you start with, what product needs to be your top product. And don't look at it necessarily from the profit standpoint, although for a business, you really do have to in the end. But then I guess where I get, again, I get a little grumpy about it's very easy for influencers to come across as everybody can do this. And it's like, yeah, but you've got money coming in that we don't have, and because I've been in conversations with homesteaders, and when we started getting serious, I set up the blog and I was going to do videos. And then I realized, like what you ran into, what's the goal? For me, my goal was feeding my family. And if I was going to spend all that time, and I wasn't going to have the time or the numbers or anything, it was going to take a long time to build up that side of the homestead. How was that going to feed my family? How did it meet my goal? And so that's when I scaled way back. I was like, the blog is not as important as making sure I'm taking care of our ducks, or that I'm canning up those potatoes today. Like, that's way more important. I've got to call the gal to make sure that we're ready to butcher these ducklings or, whatever. But I would then challenge you to kind of do the same. Sit back and ask yourself, what is the goal and what product is your top level product? What's your second? What's your third? Because that's where you need to put your time, and that's where you need to put your money, and your resources and all of that. If your top product is the marketing, and because it's paying for everything else, and that's what brings you the most joy, then that's what you need to do. But then personally, I would probably make it clear that it's not necessarily a farm, but a homestead. Or, it's what my stepmom used to accuse my dad of all the time that he hated. It was a hobby farm. Because back in the 80s, we didn't always use the homestead.
I happily wear the label of homestead. I happily wear the label of, hey, we homestead. Like we produce probably about 80% of our own food. Like that I feel like is fair. Hobby farm makes me cringe because it's like, oh, you're just not serious. You might as well be racing remote control cars there, bud. Like, and that actually, I that label drives me insane.
Yeah, my dad, he would glare at my stepmom every time because he hated, she was like, oh, the hobby farmer, because she'd go to on a real farm, and he's like, stop it. Farmstead would make a lot of sense as a term.
Oh, I've actually thought about that before, where it's like, what we do, I think, is 100% farmstead. Like, I think we would fall squarely in that category because I do run this like a business. Like, despite appearances sometimes, I actually think I'm a very much, this is where my work background actually is. I ran businesses and I was, working at companies. That was my job. And so that is how I run the farm. But we do it at a smaller scale. We are producing a lot of food for ourselves, too, as part of that. Like, bees, maple syrup, our garden. Like, I'm not selling any of that stuff. That's stuff that, really keeps us going. Like, and there is that nuance versus, even, heck, even though I don't eat the duck eggs, but, the chicken eggs, I eat 3 or 4 chicken eggs a day. Like, that's a huge portion of my, food consumption comes in chicken. Or the chicken that we eat, we're eating one of the chickens that I raised this summer for dinner tonight. Like, that's what I'm going to go down and cook later. And so, that's there. Yeah. But then if I was just doing that stuff, that takes away from the business of a true, big picture that everybody thinks is here's what a farm is kind of thing.
Yeah. You do run into that. I remember, I think it was during the hunting dogs thing, which we were totally on your side with. I don't understand. Here in Michigan, people would just shoot the dogs. But anyway, we're a little different.
I don't want to shoot somebody. It's not the dog's fault. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I know. I'm just telling you what would happen here. If somebody all of a sudden came on their property and had animals going after their farm animals, legally, you're taking a risk.
Yeah, no.
But we'd probably have a little bit higher gun ownership too. But anyway, somebody was like, well, he's not a real farm. And I remember watching that video and hearing that statement. I was like, of course he's a farm. First of all, he's got a farm product and he has a profit. A homestead isn't supposed to be for profit. A homestead is to take care of the home and the family first. If you have excess, you sell out of the excess. Farmstead, I look at as this kind of that in between. We do it, but not necessarily to scale. We're taking care of our family first, but the plan is to have excess to sell. But we have this other income that is what we really live on, and I think that would make more sense. I do think you run into the problem where you really have a highly varied audience. You have the people watching you who do know. You have the people, they know and do. You've got the people who don't do it anymore, but they still know. And you've got the people who don't do any of it, don't know any of it, but like the cute animals. And you've got to make all of them happy, or at least somewhat, because you've got to keep your numbers up.
Feel my pain. You feel it.
I get it. Hey, I taught middle school and high school, for 3 years, and you got to deal with what you have. But I do think if you set up some ways to deal with making sure you're encouraging those who know and do to give you that feedback, and making sure that they are safe to give feedback, in your comment sections. If you do, make it really clear that they're, and I know you have, but like you said, not everybody's watching absolutely every video. And, if you just kind of keep making it clear, you want to be part of the conversation, that this is the larger farmstead, homestead conversation we are having in our culture now. And, hey, that person had some really good advice or whatever, but it's also okay to just make the really cute dog videos because, everybody loves those. But my husband would say we need more videos of the ducks. I'm just throwing that out there. That was a lot of why we stopped watching.
And it's funny, well, actually, so the video I'm going to shoot tomorrow, and you'll see how like the timing gets weird because I'm usually about a week or two behind. Yeah. But it will be I've now moved all of my birds back into the hoop coop for the winter, and so it's going to be a release the quacking video tomorrow. Or that I'm shooting tomorrow that'll show up probably in like 2 weeks.
Okay.
Like around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we love that part. Like every time we would watch a video, it was like, where are the ducks? Where are the ducks?
Well, the more I add, the more animals I add, right? And I actually just butchered my pigs yesterday. Also to give you a sense of like here's
that's yeah.
Even yesterday, that was a lot of work for
lots. Yeah. It is a lot of work. And that's one of the things that I will admit I get grumpy with I will say more with other influencers. I think you've been really fair all along into how much work a lot of this stuff is behind the scenes. But like some of them, it's like, oh yeah, we just butchered, 100 chickens yesterday. It was fun. No big deal. No big deal, honey. 100 chickens? Like, yeah, they're like, those of us who've done it know that's not, like, oh, no big deal. Everybody can do this. Not everybody can do that.
So let me play, not that I agree, and I try to act counter to that, but to play devil's advocate and kind of voice their perspective, right? If they're out there just trying to say, hey, grow an audience and build things, like, getting into the nitty gritty of, doing 100 chickens or even just doing 25 ducks, like, which is like, I'd argue.
Ducks are, yeah.
No, doing 25 ducks is twice as hard as doing 100 chickens in my mind, like, no question about it.
That's why we use a processor now, because we found an Amish family that does it, and they do an amazing job for a very fair price. And we're just like, you've got the setup, and then we don't.
But I guess but here's the point that I was making in defense of others, and is that if you think of the potential audience, right? Somebody who has the knowledge that you have, right? They are a tiny portion. I'll say like out of 100 people, like 3 people fall into the category of knowledge that you have who are watching and consuming content on YouTube or Instagram somewhere, right?
That's probably fair.
The remaining 97 probably fall into a place where it's like, ooh, that could be fun someday, or I might like to do that someday. And so they're playing to the majority of their audience. And I mean, that's what I think I'm guilty of that too in a lot of ways. I try to be as open as I can and be as realistic as I can. But even still, like, I mean, to your point, like, I did a video on Saturday introducing a new call duck. If I was just a pure profit farm, I would never add a call duck into the mix. But I did it because, number one, he's cute and he's a rescue, and like he was like there was no home and a neighbor needed to get rid of him. And I was like, it'd be kind of fun to have this little guy running around. Let's give it a shot. And that's why
they sound hilarious.
I am so glad I added him just because, like, yeah, he does nothing for my duck business, but just the sheer joy I have of seeing him run around with the rest of the flock, it's amazing. So it's such a good decision. But that's also something that for most people, that's going to really resonate with them. They're going to enjoy that video way more than somebody who wants me to go into the nitty gritties. And this is why I don't even make duck processing or goose processing videos anymore, where most of those people are going to be angry at me. Not even that they won't watch it. They will be actively angry if I make a video talking about, well, here's how we do a scald, and then we'll do a pluck, and then we'll do a wax. And then sometimes we might need to do a second cycle of it just to get it a fully clean bird. Like, nobody's going to want to watch that. And I will have, like, people coming at me with torches for making that video, too. And so, and then
that makes sense. I've seen that.
And so, And so like, that's why I don't make those types of videos anymore. And it's not because I don't do it. It's not because I don't think it's the right way to handle it. I try to give my animals a very good life and make it a very clean ending. But the realities of content creation would have me do it a little bit differently and show something a little bit differently. When I look at others who aren't showing those types of things too, I have to imagine and give them the benefit of the doubt and think that they're in kind of a similar place.
That's when I would say it's okay to still be honest even without showing it. Instead of saying, oh, it was so easy for us to do this. No, honey, that wasn't easy. You can be honest and say it was a rough day. It was really hard work, And anybody who's done it is going, yeah, that was hard work. We really get it. And those who haven't are like, oh, so it isn't just, okay, so I probably should look into what I need to know if I'm going to do it. Like, don't sugarcoat it. That's where I get grumpy when people are like, oh, anybody can grow this.
I think you're spot on with that. And I think if I'm going to actually reflect on like society as a whole, like step out of farming or homesteading, right? So many people in like internet content creation are often trying to say, let me sell you this idea. Let me sell you this approach. Let me sell you this thing. And it's like inherently based in consumerism. And the irony is that, yes, homesteading as a movement and as an activity has always almost been intentionally anti-consumerist. And so, yeah, it is a cognitive dissonance for sure. I totally get it.
Well, and then I can see how that creates issues with your business because you need sponsors. You need the clicks, you need the content that pays. But you're right. Homesteading is very anti-consumerist, and so, and you're definitely not the only one. I've seen so many influencers where it's like, oh, we just got this new thing. Did you need that? Can I afford that? Like, why are you doing a video on that? Oh, did they pay you for that? Oh, so they give it like, okay, the freeze dryers. You're not going to be started.
Because they're like $6,000 and like,
that's more than my car was, but I'm just saying, like everybody has to have a freeze dryer. Everybody has to have, and all these influencers were given it. They got them free, and then they're telling all their followers, you need to spend $5,000, $6,000 or more on this thing, plus the electric costs, plus the bluff, and it's like, but you didn't tell me you got it free. Or it's down in the small print under the video that you've got to click to expand. And
believe me, and honestly, I had the opportunity to get a freeze dryer. I'll have you know, and essentially, well, no, but essentially, I struggle with that as a model. And so when I'm thinking about even like what sponsors and things I do, I'm actually genuinely saying, hey, is this number one something that I use or would use, and like that becomes criteria one. Do I feel good about it? And like, that, and I'll give those folks the benefit of the doubt too, that those freeze dryers look pretty darn cool. But I think the other dilemma I have is, and you actually don't see me doing a lot of videos anymore where it's anything, homesteading or farming related for the most part, where like I will basically just, buy that stuff and just, I'm much happier advertising a cereal that I really enjoy than, trying to sell somebody on a freeze dryer, because it just doesn't sit right with me, because I think you're right. It like does create this expectation.
That's one thing that I've always appreciated in your videos is you will say, they sent this to me. I tried it. I like this. Like, you're very clear about that. There are a lot of influencers who aren't. I don't know if that's part of the contract that they sign or what, but it's like, or they'll, like I said, they'll put it in the tiny little fine print, or they'll quick do it at the very end of the video when most people will click away of, oh, by the way, I got this free. If you're going to be sponsored, tell us, make sure that we know, because it does.
Well, there's some complicated things, right? Oh, completely.
Yeah.
So specifically, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, has specific rules that content creators need to abide by when they're disclosing what's going on. And so if somebody is paying you money to talk about something, you have to disclose that. And even there's some best practices. Like I try to do it in the first 30 seconds of that video. Like, today's video is sponsored by blah, blah, blah. And like I try to make sure like in the first like 30 seconds, you're not confused. There's like a little tag on YouTube that you can check. Same thing with TikTok. So that's number one. Number two, like if you're doing something where you get a commission, like so the freeze dryers actually fall into that case. Like if you're getting a commission for selling this freeze dryer and you get like 5% of purchase price or something like that, you need to disclose that when somebody's going to a link. Where it gets murky is when something's being sent to you for free. And do you need to disclose that it was sent to you for free? That's not necessarily considered payment. If you're doing a review, that's not necessarily considered payment. And so it's very, very murky in terms of what you can or can't do or what you shouldn't. I just try to err on the side of caution and be like, hey, look, yeah, this, like, for example, like the e-bike I ride around, right? They sent me that for free. They said, hey, we want to give this to you. You can test it out and ride it. I freaking love that thing. I ride it multiple times a day. It is the best tool I've added to the farm this entire year. But yeah, they gave it to me free. And so I don't know, should everybody go out there and spend $2,000 on an e-bike? I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say that. Am I glad I have this e-bike? 100%. And so that's the balance. Now, when I made a video about the e-bike and first introduced it, I was very clear and transparent. But when you see me every day going out to the cattle and moving the cattle and I'm riding my bike and that's how I'm getting up there and Abby's chasing me along, I'm not necessarily disclosing that. And I think that that's a little bit of that struggle too of like, how frequently do you need to say something?
Yeah. And, and I can see where you're coming from because your farm and your marketing are so intertwined. And you do have to be careful of who your audience is. And I could definitely see it'd be very difficult for you to do certain videos. Like, mostly because a lot of people who watch, and I see it in the comments anyway, clearly have never done it.
Exactly. And if you think about it this way too, right? Like the platforms themselves, right? Like I have learned a tremendous amount of information from YouTube over the years, like going back to when I was in Washington, D.C., dreaming of one day starting a farm. I'd watch YouTube videos, like Jack Spirko's videos about the Duck Chronicles were the first things that got me into the idea of raising ducks. Now, they are not offering something that I was getting it for free, essentially, or quote unquote free. But, they were running advertising in it. That's how YouTube or Google actually pays for a massive platform like YouTube. And so there is this dilemma that, yes, there's a learning value to it, but there is that automatic trade-off that happens of commerce in that you giving your eyeballs and you giving your time creates money for somebody else, whether that's going to the content creator, whether that's going to the platform, or whether that's going to the advertiser. You always have to think about like who's in play in that trade-off. And that's just inherent to the business of internet, just like it was inherent to television and newspapers and anything else.
Well, I know like when I'm old enough, I remember when we were having those conversations in education. Can we use YouTube videos? They have advertising. And now we all do it without even thinking about it. But the advertising and the merchandising and all of that, it's all become intertwined. And I think it's always important to kind of take a step back. And I think it would be fair if you said things like, the social media money paid for this.
So I hope you guys enjoyed listening to that conversation as much as I enjoyed having that conversation. And I personally got a ton out of it. And I am eternally grateful to Carina for taking the time to have the conversation with me, as well as her willingness to be really direct and honest with me. It's so appreciated. And I don't know, quite frankly, I find it makes all the difference in the world to get feedback like that. Now just a couple of follow-up items to really reflect on related to that conversation. Number one, please be nice to her if you run into her on social media. Because she was critical of me does not mean anybody should be harassing her or bullying her. And like I said, I actually appreciated the conversation we had and the fact that she was willing to put herself out there and have that conversation with me. Second, to Carina's point that she made at one point in the conversation, when you see somebody in the comments and they're criticizing me or offering me feedback or telling me how I might be able to do something different or better, don't use that as an opportunity to pile onto them. Really ask some questions about what they're saying and try to understand what they're saying and why they're saying it, because they might be offering some really good advice that's based on experience. And I personally value that. And when folks pile on them because they just dislike the fact that they're critiquing me, I don't think that that's a good thing. And then number 3, I feel like this conversation requires a part 2. And specifically, I wanted to have a very direct and honest conversation with a homesteader who also creates YouTube content and has a business model that's actually somewhat similar to my own. And so next week's podcast episode is going to be a special one where my friend Jess, who does some things very similar to me, she and I are going to have a conversation talking about the challenges of being a YouTube homesteader, as well as give you some insight and transparency to how our businesses actually work. And so stay tuned for that episode. It'll be out next Friday. And until then, be sure to check out my new book, Toby Dog of Goldshaw Farm. Actually, ironically enough, my friend Jess wrote the foreword to that book. And I will be back with another podcast episode really, really soon. Thanks for listening, everybody.
It's got a soul, this hero farm. It falls asleep inside my arms. We walk the fields under the stars. For love is here, Goldshaw Farm.